Hello and welcome to Past, Present, Future Cast, the podcast that's also a tarot reading. I am your host, Maria Elena Pukulis, and before we get into this week's interview, let's take a look at our card of the week for Sunday, March 16th to Saturday, March 22nd. Now, this is a special week because it contains the spring equinox. For us here in the Northern Hemisphere, this is the first day of spring, and for those in the Southern Hemisphere, this is the first day of fall. This is a day of perfect balance where day and night are in equilibrium. I like to think of the spring equinox as the astrologer's new year because it is the first day of Aries season, which is the first sign in zodiacal order. The spring equinox is a wonderful day of rebirth. Aries is a sign that bursts forth like a seedling thrusting its way out of the crust of the earth. If you struggled to set goals and plans for the new year back in January, now is an even better time to start planning, scheming, and most importantly, acting on your goals for the next 6 months. The card I've pulled to help give us some guidance for this week as we welcome the arrival of spring is the Page of Cups. I pulled this card from the Fifth Spirit Tarot by Charlie Claire Burgess, which you hear me mention all the time because it is one of my most favorite decks. Charlie describes this card as, and I quote, learning through imagination and intuition, a viewpoint of wonder and whimsy, end quote. Pages are curious students. They are always learning, experimenting, and exploring their curiosities. The Page of Cups does this in an intuitive and feelings-driven way. How can we use our imaginations and connection to spirit and intuition to drive our goal setting and new ventures as we emerge into spring? Our ability to dream and hold on to visions of hope, unity, peace, and emotional safety for all people is a key weapon in the terrible battle being waged in American society at this point. Do not let those who wish to sow chaos and disruption, yes, I am referring to those within and serving the White House right now, do not let them hijack your imagination. Those in power at this moment are attempting to flood us with terrible and terrifying possibilities so that we believe we are powerless and the changes they are attempting to force through are inevitable. But that is not true. We as a people are powerful, and many of their attempts to make real and significant change are actually failing or at least being met with heavy resistance. One very, very small practice that I have been employing is not allowing myself to use my imaginative power to manifest their results for them. What do I mean by that? We know that our thoughts are powerful. And while I also know that not everything that pops into my head is going to be manifested into reality, I am still refusing to imagine them succeeding in the worst ways. For example, I am aware and informed about this administration's attempts to undermine and eventually destroy the Department of Education. I am not, however, allowing myself to hold the image of the worst case scenarios of these attempts in my head and in my heart. I'm not going to sit here and outline and ruminate on all of the horrible things that might happen if they are successful. I am going to give my imaginative energy to those who are resisting these actions. As per Mr. Rogers' suggestions, I am going to look for the helpers, and I'm going to imagine them strong and determined, well-resourced and scrappy. I am going to use my imaginative energy to visualize them succeeding in protecting students and our collective right to education. Now, of course, if we stop here in the phase of imagination, that is still spiritual bypassing. That is still just relying on thoughts and prayers, and we are so far past that being enough to change the dangerous trajectory that we are on. But keeping our energy clear and focused on the outcomes we want and not just the outcomes that we are scared of is part of the energetic hygiene required to take meaningful and concrete action like protesting, calling our representatives, redirecting our funds and resources towards small businesses and companies that are not complying with the bullshit, causing a stink at a town hall, or having meaningful and heart-changing conversations with those who are waking up to the reality that they may have voted for and now regret. Water, which is symbolized by the Suit of Cups, needs a physical container to be most effective. So please make sure that you are pairing your spiritual and energetic resistance with material resistance. As I gaze at this card, this Page of Cups, I can't help but notice the resemblance of this drawing to the Palestinian activist Mahmoud Khalil, who was abducted by the US government and is currently facing an illegal deportation for the quote-unquote crime of speaking out against the ongoing genocide in Palestine. I see Mahmoud's curly hair spilling over onto his forehead, and I can also see the sense of hope that one must have in order to be an activist. The figure in this card is sending off balloons filled with water, a symbol for hope, unity, and the dissolution of the boundaries that separate us. May we each receive this hope and continue to amplify it on Mahmoud's behalf and on behalf of all of those who are made to suffer in the name of power and greed. We are far more alike than we are different, and no one of us is free until we are all free. May Mahmoud Khalil, all Palestinian people, and all people facing oppression be free. This is my hope, my prayer, and the driving force of my action as we continue living through these strange and revolutionary times. Now, shifting gears a bit. Once again, thank you for listening. Please rate and review the show on your favorite listening platforms if you are enjoying it. Remember that there is bonus content, including tarot-inspired journal prompts, guided meditations, and other musings that don't fit into the regular show, available for free on patreon.com/Persephonic, Persephonic, like Persephone, the goddess of spring, who is emerging with this spring equinox. Just look for the button to become a free member when you do go to that link. There's also a link in show notes. You might have to search around a little bit for the become a free member option, but it is there. You can also support the show by sharing it with a friend or two. Word of mouth is always the best advertising, and I greatly appreciate those of you who have shared already. You guys are the absolute best. Now, without further ado, here is this week's interview. All right. Hello and welcome. I am sitting here with Emma Vasseur. Emma is an evolutionary astrologer and coach. And when asked to describe or define herself, she said, there are so many ways to answer this. Emma is a curious, open-minded, and compassionate human who is in awe of how both beautiful and painful life can be at the same time. Emma is a white, queer, cis woman from mostly French-Canadian descent, and she is determined to recognize and question all of the ways in which she has been conditioned and on a path toward radical authenticity and truth. How wonderful. Emma, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
And we were just having a little conversation about how it is sometimes difficult to describe or like give a job title to what you do. And that's something that I totally relate with. So how are we feeling right now about evolutionary, no, that was right. I said it right the first time. Evolutionary astrologer and
Mhm.
coach. That's feeling good to you right now?
Yeah, I think that's until I find some title that kind of embodies it all. Like that's where I'm landing right now. Really, ultimately, if I could just say what it is, it's I'm somebody who deeply listens and
Mm.
supports people in practicing discernment, what is theirs, what is not theirs to do, and to support the process of really kind of embodying that and supporting transformation and change.
Beautiful. So, what does your work really look like right now when you're working with a client, when you're working with someone? What does that look like?
Yeah. So, in addition to astrology and coaching, I also do craniosacral bodywork. So, however folks find me, whether they come in through a walk-in reading for astrology, come in because they found me on an internet search or a referral. So if they're coming for craniosacral, they might come and have a more embodied experience, and then we'll start to talk about other services I offer, other ways to work with me, or just other things they're looking for support with. And then I share with them that I also practice astrology, coaching, and sometimes that evolves then into a different relationship. Some folks just come to see me for craniosacral body work. Others come for astrology readings. Others come for coaching. And some kind of do all three. And we just kind of weave it together. Something I'm hoping to build and intending to build and working on building is more of a kind of a container where we can do it all, but there's like a 3 to 6 month kind of container that I'm holding where we can utilize any of the services or tools and resources that I have. I have a space locally in Tucson, and I also offer services virtually so people can work with me no matter wherever they are in the world, and then also locally here in Tucson.
Isn't that so the ideal of being able to have, like, a good chunk of time to continually work with someone, and you use the word, like, transformation, and I feel like it takes that series of seeing the same practitioner to really, like, get the most, like, juicy results out of their work and their support. So I hope that that continues to grow for you because it's also something that I have in mind right now that I'm trying to work on building. So you and I have something in common, which is we both practice craniosacral therapy. I love cranio, and I rarely get to meet or discuss or experience that with someone else. And not a lot of people know about craniosacral therapy. So how would you describe what a session looks like? What's the goal going in? What is this kind of unique form of body work?
Yes, it's a great question and one that has taken me 10 years to formulate a response to. So, the way that I describe it to people is I kind of start by just saying, there is a craniosacral system within our bodies, just like there is a respiratory system or a cardiovascular system. So, my job as the practitioner is to really deeply listen for the rhythm that is created by the craniosacral system. And in a session, we're working to restore balance within that system. So, we're working with the nervous system and the cerebral spinal fluid. And I kind of lean towards the biodynamic perspective of craniosacral, which is the emphasis more on the fluid body. So, really doing what I can to support kind of homeostasis or balance within the fluid body. In a session, whoever comes, they remain fully clothed. So they come and get situated. There's a massage table, just like with other forms of bodywork. There's a table that the receiver would lay on and get comfortable. And it's very subtle, very slow work. So I'll tell them kind of, I always like to start down at the feet. That's a space where I feel I get a lot of good first communication from the body. Because again, my job is to remain as grounded as I can and neutral as I can to then feel into and sense into the rhythms of the body and the person that I'm working with. So I'll start there and kind of go through a series of hand placements guided by the person I'm working on. So that's my job, is to listen for where there might be imbalances, stagnation, restrictions, whatever there might be. And the intention and goal is really dependent on who's coming to receive and what their intentions and goals are. I have folks come to me because they're in a lot of emotional distress or emotional pain, mental distress, anxiety and depression, um, overwhelm and confusion, which there's so much of, especially right now. And then physical aches and pains. I've worked with people who are post surgery, recovering from neck fusions or back fusions. So the goals, all I can work with a number of goals. My goal is to meet that person wherever they are, and hold space for their body to do what it's naturally capable of doing. And as you know, as a craniosacral therapist, the whole practice is rooted in the belief that the body is self healing. And so, my goal and intention is to create the environment for that person's body and that whole person to be able to tap into that flow, that ability to self heal.
Absolutely. It's so different than other forms of body work. So I got into body work starting actually with craniosacral therapy that I learned and practiced and studied in while I was going to school to receive my massage therapist license. But now in my work, I'm primarily doing more standard massage. So, you made the note, and it's important to make the note with craniosacral therapy that the person is fully clothed because when we think of massage and body work, you're often not clothed because we're getting more into those surface and deeper muscle tissues. And I'm doing a lot of deep tissue these days, and doing deep tissue work is so like I am manipulating the muscle, like I am taking a really active role and pushing into the body and kind of, gosh, I try not to take this approach, but in a lot of ways forcing the body to relax or release, whereas craniosacral therapy is so much more of this like receptive active role or a passive role as the practitioner of just holding and gently requesting, offering the suggestion that the body could make some adjustments to bring itself back into balance.
Totally. Totally. And honestly, I think that's why because I was trained am trained as a massage therapist as well. And when I was in school for massage therapy, received craniosacral from a classmate who took the elective. And I was just blown away by how through his gentle, just presence, touch, I was able to go so deeply into a meditative state and come out of it feeling so connected to myself. And so I spent, my first couple of years in body work doing kind of deep tissue, and I worked in downtown Minneapolis in the skyways. There's
Nice.
like tunnels that connect
Oh,
buildings because
yeah.
it's cold. But I worked for a chiropractor downtown Minneapolis, and folks were coming with the same aches and pains week after week. And it was so draining on my body. I wasn't yet aware of my own energetic boundary, lack of energetic boundaries, and expectation that I do fix this person.
Mm.
So when they came back, I was so emotionally and physically drained that I had to like figure something else out. And that's actually when I switched over to going to school for integrative health and well-being coaching. So all the while going and studying with Upledger for craniosacral bodywork, because I really resonated with this, just the idea that by being present and holding space and deeply listening beyond words, we can inspire and contribute to healing and change. And that's honestly, I view coaching, integrative health and well-being coaching, as the same thing as craniosacral. Craniosacral is coaching without words, is kind of how I
Mm.
look at it.
Mhm.
So they're both can be seen as more like you're saying, passive or receptive, or it's holding a different kind. It's like there's a different kind of effort that's involved. And it's more like the work that I'm doing is like standing back, kind of creating this container. I keep using that word, but I don't have a better one for it. But this space where I can see, kind of take a bigger step back and look and recognize different patterns that might be happening, ask questions to evoke the person I'm working with their own wisdom and help them to kind of embody that. And I see craniosacral as that too, but just without the words. So I really got into all of these modalities because I really feel so called to hold that space, create those spaces, and really listen and reflect back each person's wisdom, innate ability to heal, and to really step into like their power, their voice, whatever it might be that helps them to kind of keep moving forward on the path they feel called to be on.
What are some maybe results that you notice clients experience from working with you?
Let's see. I'm thinking of a few folks that I'm currently working with, I've been working with for a while. One person who I see strictly for craniosacral has been mentioning to me, it's probably been maybe 6 months, and we see each other at least once a month. Most often, it's every other week. And he was sharing with me that there's just a more openness and a deeper sense of calm and ability to relax. Aches and pains have gone down. Like he came to see me initially for like hip pain or back pain, and that has significantly improved. And now it's more of just like the mental and emotional benefits that he's noticing. For coaching, it's so funny how it happens, and I'm sure you notice this too, but it's like the people that resonate with me are usually looking for support with just like feeling okay being themselves, which is like such medicine for me because I that's what I want to do is I want to support people in being like okay being themselves and aligning more with their authenticity. So in my coaching sessions, some of the benefits that they've shared with me that they're getting from our work together is a sense of empowerment, feeling more confident in making the decisions they want to make for themselves, less overwhelm. One of my clients, she started seeing me when one of her initial goals was to just be able to manage like all the different moving pieces of her life and not be overwhelmed, and has made great progress on that. So those are a few things. And then with astrology, I think like 9.9 times out of 10, people leave readings feeling validated, affirmed, and encouraged to be kind of more of who they're here to be, feeling like a sense of not that I'm giving them permission, they're kind of giving themselves permission to fully embody who they are.
Yeah,
So,
there's something I think it's similar in astrology and tarot readings, two really different practices, but the way that it is so validating is a really good word to have someone reflect back to you to be such a mirror and say, okay, well, this is what I'm seeing in your cards or in your chart. And then having that person receive that. And it is a little bit like getting permission to embody that in a way of having someone reflect it back to you. And you can go, okay, yeah, you know what? You are right. That is who I am. Yeah. Let me accept that a little bit more. Let me take that in a little bit more. So I'm
yeah.
hearing so much in your current work of this sense of transformation, this emphasis on helping folks have the space to evolve into their best selves using their relationship with you, whether it's a coaching relationship, therapist, massage therapist, like bodywork practitioner, client relationship, having that relationship be this. I'm making this motion because I'm thinking of the element of air right now. And the way that I often describe how the element of air works is it's this what you as the practitioner are exhaling out or giving out is then kind of absorbed by that person, changes within them. They can send that back out again. There's this almost like it's not
Mhm.
necessarily a reciprocal relationship because you are the practitioner, they are paying you to gain something, but because of the way relationships work, there's this kind of flow that is then leading probably both of you to transform in a lot of ways. One thing about being a practitioner is we're always growing and learning and transforming, but primarily the client then being able to receive this space to evolve. Is that sounding like a good summation? You're nodding your head.
Yes, I would say that's very accurate. I love that you brought in the air element, and it does feel reciprocal to me.
There's we talked about, there's the bodywork element that is kind of that coaching without words, but then so much of what you do outside of that, the coaching and the astrological consultations, there is a lot of dialogue going on there. So thinking that's where I'm thinking of the element of air and the two cards that came up. So you basically for your present work right here, we've essentially had the same two cards come up. We have the death card. So we've got this beautiful, beautiful emphasis on transformation, evolution. This is the Fifth Spirit Tarot deck, which I've used a few times in these interviews so far. And I picked it for our interview today because of the way Charlie Claire Burgess includes astrological glyphs in their artwork. So this one here with the death card being associated with Scorpio, and Scorpio having in modern astrology the association with Pluto, we have those two glyphs here on the card. So huge emphasis on transformation, evolution, evolving, shedding away that which is no longer needed. There's so much shedding involved. Thinking about with cranio as well, when we're doing craniosacral therapy, I do the occipital base release hand motion. I'm like, when we're doing this, there's so much of a sense of like releasing what the body is holding on to, that the body is like holding tightly to, whether how does it that Upledger describes it, like trauma vectors or something.
Yeah.
When
Emotional cysts.
Yeah, so when like whether it's emotional or physical, like impact happens in the body and there's this sense to like hold tight around it. So much of what cranio can do is give the body space to say, ooh, let me exhale that. Let me get rid of that and send it to be decomposed. So that's really coming through in this card right here. And then the second
Yes.
card that came up, I refer to as the mini death card. When I'm doing readings and this card comes up, I go, okay, this is basically the mini death card because it's the 10 of Swords. So it's that same essence coming through the energy of the element of air. A lot of regeneration, rebirth being shown here.
I love that. Yep, it feels so spot on. I don't know if you're into human design, Maria Elena,
A
but
little bit.
according to my human design, it's like it all, and I have a ton of Scorpio in my birth chart as well. I have
Mm.
my South Node, I have Pluto, and I have my moon in Scorpio. So I've spent lifetimes in this scorpionic Plutonian space. And in human design, it reflects back to me how my role here, my purpose is to deeply listen to support transformation. And I feel like each of the modalities that I do is like, that's what it's about. And I love that those are the cards that you pulled because that feels spot on.
Yeah, it's an incredible summation. Deeply listening, being in that like reciprocal relationship to help folks move through their transformations. And I'm sure you have been through many of your own, especially with the moon in Scorpio. Shout out to the Pluto and Scorpio generation. I'm there with you with evolutionary astrology. And I've talked to one other evolutionary astrologer. My understanding of it is we're kind of looking at cycles that we're going through in this life and how that's related maybe to past lives. But how would you define evolutionary astrology?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what you just said is absolutely right. The way that I describe it to people, because people are like, I know what about astrology is, but what's the evolutionary part? And I kind of start by just saying evolutionary astrology operates under the assumption that this is one of many lifetimes. You don't have to believe that to get any benefit or value from this, but essentially the birth chart shows us where we've been and the patterns and habits that we're kind of stuck in because of where we've been. And the birth chart as a whole gives us insight into the tools and resources we came here with and the types of experiences we're longing to have. in order to support our evolution beyond past lifetimes. And so the North Node shows us the types of experiences that will support us in kind of untying the knots from the kind of karmic experiences we've had, essentially allowing us to kind of break free from those cycles, kind of keeping us stuck.
Yeah, I like that you say you don't necessarily have to believe in past lives to benefit from evolutionary astrology, because I am, of course, someone who does. If anyone's listened to the second episode of this podcast where I spoke to someone who had done a past life regression for me, I very much do believe in that. And when working with folks who are maybe skeptical about that concept, I also kind of just think about in this present life, I refer to past versions of myself as past lives that I've been through already in this lifetime. And I think that can also be really useful. You can apply the same concept of the South Node, North Node to the lives you've lived. I'm just at the tail end of my Saturn return. I'm 29. I can list 5 past lives I've already been through so far. Speaking of that, how would you describe some of the past lives you've been in this lifetime and the work that you're doing in the world?
So, past lives from this current iteration. Yeah, I've been through a few. I grew up in a way that I really had to be outside of myself
Mm,
to kind of orient towards safety.
mhm.
So, grew up no concept of self at all. Like, I learned that later in my 20s when I started going to therapy when I was like 23. So, it was, yeah. And I'm also an Aquarius. And so that was very like outside the norm for where I came from. So the one lifetime was the lifetime of me just operating from what is expected or wanted of me from outside of me. How can I be liked to in order to stay safe?
Mhm.
Um, so there was that lifetime. Then there was the lifetime of like deep dive into therapy, and my therapist actually referred me to a life coach, and so that's how I found out about coaching. And in that work and in that space, really started to deeply connect, doing both in tandem,
Let's
really
let's
started to deeply
let's make a
connect.
note right there of these things can work in tandem, and your
Yep,
trained professional therapist encouraged and referred you to seek out a coach. I think that's a really important note to pay attention to, because so many people, and myself included, I fall into this sometimes of like coaching is bullshit. Like there these people aren't trained. There's no real value in here, but there is training and there are good coaches and it can really serve you even when you are exploring and experimenting and working with other kinds of therapy.
totally. And that is like, so Maria Elena, like you bring up a good point of coaches, and that is as a title. I don't want to call myself that because of those out in the world calling themselves coaches because they're like, oh, quick way to 6 figures. Let me tell you, I'm a coach and I'm not making 6 figures. That's not my goal, first of all. I mean, let's be honest, I would love to make 6 figures, but that's not why I got into this work. And that is not like, if, anyways, I could go on and on about this.
You're not
But
gonna
I do. I
start
have my master's
becoming a coach, a coach coaching coaches on how to coach coaches to get
coach.
6 figures?
Yeah, to make millions of
Yeah.
dollars. Yeah, no. I'm all for the making of money. Let's like, I'm just gonna not let, you know, tell the universe right now, like I'm open and receptive to abundance. That's okay. But yes, so I have my master's degree in integrative health and well-being coaching. It's very important to me that I understand the process and the work. And it's a disservice that it's called coaching, unfortunately. I mean, that's just what it is now. So I am also nationally board certified as a health and wellness coach. The National Board for Health and Wellness Coaches saw that problem out in the industry and was like, we have to figure out a way to let people know we've gone through some sort of credentialing process. I'm also, it's like so interesting. I mean, as an Aquarius with my South Node in the 11th house, I'm also someone that's very open to challenging kind of the status quo and the norms and all this emphasis on like credentialing when there's like people who are natural healers and are naturally gifted and are discredited because they haven't gone through the problematic institutions that are a part of our society. So I have great respect and deep respect for those who do have innate healing abilities, have been trained through their generational practices and through their family lines and bloodlines. And yeah, I am coming from a bloodline and a family line where we've been greatly disconnected from any sort of healing lineage or practice. So I definitely take it upon myself to immerse myself into ways to develop my skills, connect to mentors, and remember the way of being that is needed when we are facilitating transformation and healing with others. I've had incredible teachers. The programs I've gone through are incredible. But yeah, so just to speak to your point of people working in tandem, being able to refer, a therapist referred to a coach, I greatly benefited from working in tandem. That is also when I was in massage school. So I was getting regular body work.
A really good time to have multiple people holding space for you.
It's like it's just like I was like, oh, looking back at it now, it's like no wonder it was such like accelerated healing and transformation. Regular body work, regular work with my life coach, and regular time with a therapist. And I just want to acknowledge the immense privilege of all of that, having access to all those things, being able to pursue those things. I was working at the time as an assistant to a musician. So when we were on the road, that's when I was working. And then when I was home, I had nothing better to do than heal and focus on personal growth and development. So
Love that. So
working in tandem with other practitioners and healers is incredible. And it doesn't have to be that way either.
So you say that that was a time of really accelerated healing and learning. How did that kind of manifest for you? What did that look like?
Yeah. Well, I think back to the first time I saw my therapist, and I didn't know this at the time, but being able to kind of self reflect and look back at it, I went to that session and I was like, what can I say that she'll like me? How do I answer these questions? What's the right answer to these questions? And so I would say, to answer your question, that period really helped me to be able to understand that, again, I had no concept of self, who I was, what I wanted in the world, what excited me. I mean, you know, I knew some of these things, but I wasn't guided by them and I wasn't
Mhm.
connected to them in a way where I was in alignment with those things, and was still very much looking external and depending on those around me to validate me, to XYZ. So I got a lot. I got a lot from that period of time. Deeper self knowing. It's when I started to kind of understand the concept of like self acceptance and self compassion. And that's an ever long lifetime work in progress. So that was definitely one of my lifetimes, right? To go back to your question about like the lifetimes
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
lifetime.
what came after? So you had that kind of initial entry into, okay, I'm doing a lot of healing work. I'm in massage school. I'm, pursuing this. Well, what inspired you to go to massage school?
Yeah, yeah. So I had graduated from undergrad, right?
Mhm.
And my first job out of college was working for a musician as a personal assistant and guitar tech. So I was on the road for however many 6 to 8 weeks at a time and then home. I studied film. So it was, and this also speaks to, I didn't know what I wanted to study. I studied a little bit of everything. And then my junior year of college, my academic advisor was like, you kind of have to declare a major. Like, what are you doing? And so I was like, well, what am I closest to? And she said a comm arts degree. And so I just studied film, which was fun, but I didn't intend to be a filmmaker. I didn't intend to work in film. But again, I just like had no idea what I was doing. And so started working as a personal assistant, was on the road, and had my first massage ever.
Mhm.
And the immediate transformational experience I had from that, I brought that experience back to my life coach. And I was like, I think this is what I want to do. So then I enrolled in massage school, became a massage therapist. And that was kind of like the Pandora's box, like it opened up the world to me.
Massage school has a funny way of doing that, of opening up a world, and also cracking you right open because you are receiving so much probably more body work than anyone should be receiving in a short period of time, you kind of have to receive while you're in massage school. And it does
Yeah.
become quite the catalyst for change. So,
Mhm.
graduated, do you feel like there's any skills, little things that you picked up from that film degree that is still actively being utilized in your life now?
I'm sure there is somewhere. I might just not be seeing the connection now. I think I've always had kind of I love photography as
Mhm.
well, so I'm not actively doing anything with photography or filmography. Yeah, maybe just like the visual kind of like composition of things, or
You've
I think I
created a
will.
you've created a beautiful
What's
set behind you.
Thanks. It's been my goal for a long time to, like, set up my office in a way that's, like, when I'm looking at myself on a screen where I'm like, "Oh, okay, this is I can get on board with this."
I'm in
Um,
process here.
I think it's lovely, yes. So, yeah, just, like, composition of things, and I'm going to start a YouTube channel hopefully by the end of 2025. It's been a goal of mine for a little while. So it might come in then. I do some editing of different things. So I suppose, and then I was always interested in like documentary filmmaking. So I'm sure that will definitely come into play as well as I'm building out different platforms and creating different things. But yeah, I think on a bigger scale, the way in which film school I think carries through everything that I do is recognizing patterns and symbolism. And I studied a lot of French film. So just looking at kind of motifs and patterns and symbolism, I think applies to a lot of what I do too.
Oh, yeah, I
So,
could see that
yeah.
being really helpful, especially in your work with astrology. We have to find ways to kind of connect to these archetypes in ways that the client will understand, and so being able to pull from art and film and theater and things that might be more cultural touch points, can be really, I think, useful in that process.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, I think that's definitely applicable and relevant.
So you went to film school and then worked for this musician and then got really deep into the healing process through massage school and therapy and coaching. And then it sounds like there was another distinct era after that. What came next?
Yeah, so there was kind of a, like a transition point somewhere in there where the coaching had been really working through me and shaping me, and coaching and massage school. And then once I started coaching the program at the University of Minnesota, that was another kind of like evolutionary turning point for me. A new lifetime began where I just felt really aligned. I felt really embodied and aligned and like so sure that I was like, this is the path. So that was kind of another like era or lifetime where I was feeling really good and finished the program. And then the next little thing, the next little kind of like catalyst was a very profound evolutionary astrology reading that I had received while I was in grad school for coaching.
Mm.
And that was in 2016, I believe. We had been studying all kinds of different tools and resources to use within our coaching practices. And I was like, why is this not the thing that we're all learning to use as coaches? Because there was no other tool that I had come across. The Enneagram's fantastic, of course. Like Myers-Briggs, cool, whatever. Like all these other tools and assessments, great. But yeah, there was nothing came close, in my opinion, to that reading that I had had with this person who had not met me before, didn't know me, like, and just saw me on such a deep, profound level. And then she is also a teacher. And so I immersed myself into study with her from like 2016 to 2018 and started offering readings in 2018. So 2017 was another year that kind of blew everything up. I graduated from the program and became board certified as a health and wellness coach. Was starting to offer astrology readings. Well, that was 2018. But my dad had passed away in
Mhm.
2017. And so it was this year that I was feeling so aligned and so certain and so clear of who I was and what I was doing in the world. And then having a parent pass away with a complicated relationship, but there was still like this shift that happened on like a foundational cellular level that I couldn't put into words, but I just felt it in my bones and in my cells. I was like, everything in me is changing right now. And that happened over the course of a few years, right? But it was kind of an era of alignment that turned into this era of like great undoing and kind of this reclamation process. And at the end of 2019, moved to Tucson, didn't know anybody, moved here with my dear, dear friend, and was incredibly isolated then in 2020, as we all know what happened then. So 2020 was the mark of another kind of era where it was deep, deep self excavating, self just kind of being confronted by all of the remaining. I'm sure there's still deeper layers. So it's not like all of the remaining, but there's more. But at that time, what was still there for me to really look at and be with, like deep pain and grief and sadness, rage.
Mm.
So, and because I had just moved from Minneapolis to Tucson and in 2020, really being confronted by my own relationship to social justice work, transformative justice work, and feeling the deep nervous system connection to a place. And I was no longer there,
Mm.
and it wasn't safe to go back there. And I felt powerless, helpless, all these things. So I really dug deeper then into my own internal work around internalized systems of oppression and touched in with a few groups virtually. And that was another era of deep, deep excavation and coming into self. And now I like to say I'm in my era of emergence. So really coming out into the community, feeling the gifts of everything from 2020, I think, and 21 and 22, and being so isolated and just with my own stuff is this newfound felt sense of self-knowing,
Yeah, you're in that.
self-ownership. Yeah. Yeah.
You're in I like to use the word reemergence. It's like you're in that rebirth era because so much of the death card often is indicating actually the rebirth and the rewards and the joy that come from that willingness to shed, that willingness to evolve, that willingness. Do you feel like so with all of that change that sounds like it happened, I mean, over a series of quite a few years, but I imagine it felt kind of fast. It seems like it was kind of one change after another. When did you graduate, your undergrad?
In 2009.
Okay, okay, so there was kind of a big about a 10-year journey there of 2009 to 2019 when you landed in Tucson. Throughout that period, would you describe that decade, your emotional state in that decade? Was
Mm.
Is it a time that you think back on of like or I guess when you were in it, did it feel really challenging or not?
I think I was like blissfully unaware for a very long time. And when I started therapy, I was just like, well, I just don't want to feel like this.
Mhm.
Like, there's something off. I'm not like, I also have a lot of Sagittarius in my chart. So it's like the smallest inkling of like being dissatisfied. I'm like, I'm gonna figure this out. Yeah. So I feel like it wasn't super challenging until probably 2019. I just suddenly halfway like in the summer of 2019, fall of 2019, I just started to feel this inward pull. And so it was 2019, 2020 when it really like was challenging and hard. And before that, I think from like 2012 when I finished massage school to 2017, I felt so good. Like, I felt really aligned, I felt really embodied. There were painful periods and moments within that of fluctuations, but looking back on it, I just feel like that was an era of, like, really deep integration and embodiment and all these things, but then 2019 started to kind of turn, and then I should also say, Maria Elena, you'll understand this, like, Tucson's my Chiron and Saturn line.
Oh, okay. Ow.
And I knew that.
Yeah.
I knew that moving here. That's like speaks to my, I don't know if I'm a masochist or what, but
Where's your Saturn? What sign is your Saturn in?
Sagittarius.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So time to move.
So yeah, I'd always wanted to live somewhere else. And I don't know, my Scorpio moon's like, where can I go where I'll like do some deep transformation work? And Chiron, wounded healer, like I
You
might as well move
pivoted.
to a place where all my wounds are going to be exposed, right? And Saturn is, yeah, self sufficiency, self discipline. And it really has been an era of like feeling very much like taking self-ownership and responsibility for who I
Mm.
am and how I move in this world and all of the ways in which I have been conditioned. And my Aquarius nature is like, I'm going to break free from those. My Sagittarius is like, I'm on a quest to do so.
Yeah, you can really
Yeah.
kind of come into your adulthood as a healer when you're on your Saturn and Chiron line. That's incredible. There's someone here in Tucson, Key Ocho, who goes by the Chiron Guide now, and I'm really hoping to have them on the podcast at some point. Key, if you're listening, I know you're not, but Key, if you're listening, I would love to interview you. Their work has really been kind of putting Saturn in, or Chiron in front of me at this time. But I like hearing that this time of immense change and transformation didn't feel like the worst, like a slog, because the cards that we had come up, I think often freak people out a little bit because they're both fives. And the fives in tarot are so much, it's just about change. It's so much about change. And there was this kind of real series, and it sounds like an entire decade of your life that was changing and growing. And I'm doing this, and now I'm doing this, and I'm also learning this, and like all this evolution that didn't really have an endpoint for quite a while. It just kept building upon itself. And that feels like kind of that essence of the fives. And sometimes that energy of five can be really stressful because change can feel dangerous. Change can feel really scary. So, but it doesn't have to be that way. It's not always how that energy is going to express. So, the two cards that came up first, we'll talk about, we've got the Five of Wands coming up here. And so the Five of Wands, it's like you kind of explicitly said this, where you're like, I didn't really know, what I was passionate about, what I was excited about. Well, maybe I did, but I wasn't aligned with it yet. You weren't kind of allowing yourself to maybe grasp onto or follow that that Sagittarius, all that Sagittarius energy, that joy prior to going through this whole decade long phase of evolution and change. It was maybe you're maybe, like you said, not as aligned with or embodying who you are on a really core level. There was a lot of, it sounded like, people pleasing or having to figure out how to be likable or the good version or someone who's not making waves, just kind of doing what is going to make other people happy. I think a lot of times the Five of Swords comes up when we're starting to break out of that people pleasing behavior, when we're starting to adjust into, no, I can actually just do the things that make me happy. And that might cause tension or conflict with others. There's so much conflict in this card. In the Smith Waite version, it's five people fighting like with sticks. In this Fifth Spirit Tarot version, it's all of these kind of tools and weapons out as if they're going to go after that hornet's nest. And sometimes it feels like an affront to others to be fully embodied in ourselves. And oftentimes it's because they're not being fully embodied in their desires. So that I hear really strongly in how you're kind of delineating these past eras. And then the other card that came up is the one that I think people get really freaked out about, which is the Five of Pentacles. Because the Five of Pentacles it's got that image of there's going to be lack. I'm going to be poor. I'm going to not have the resources that I need. And a lot of times it's just a change in your material circumstances that can go in many different directions, or a change in what I'm hearing in your story is so much of like a changing and accumulation of skills and the way that you are like literally your job changed quite a few times, it sounds like, through this experience. So it's just kind of like the material existence around you can shift and change and adjust, and that can feel scary. Sometimes that can feel like we're really lacking. There was probably times in that decade where you're like, well, I got to change jobs again. Don't know what like my income is going to be, or how am I going to pay for this program, or how am I going to pay for this new experience that you're going through. But it doesn't have to be the end of the world. Change doesn't have to be the end of the world. And through all of that change that was happening kind of on more, let's say, maybe more mundane change that was happening kind of externally, leads to, as I'm looking at these cards, kind of leads to, there was change happening internally, certainly in that journey. We talked about there was a lot of healing work going on, a lot of growth, but all of that led to a really like deep evolution in terms of who you are as a healer, as a practitioner, as someone who is in service within the world, and as someone who is striving to know themselves really deeply.
Yeah, yes. I don't know, I think I'm so grateful for astrology, right? Because it helps me to like put things into words that sometimes are just like, how do I explain this? I have Uranus conjunct my ascendant in Sagittarius also as well. I am not freaked out by change. I think I like am too okay with it that I like never really people probably wonder if I'll ever settle ever anywhere ever. Yeah, so I'm grateful for that because it has been a lot of change. It's been a lot of change, but I think I'm deeply motivated by that death card, like by the transformation, by and that combination of Scorpio and Aquarius of like being so motivated by that Aquarian energy to break free from patterns of conditioning, and in Scorpio in such a way that allows me to really be honest and truthful about like who I am and how I move through the world and how I want to feel in this lifetime, and healing deep emotional wounds from past lifetimes, lifetimes in this lifetime, the conditioning that happens because of trauma, generational trauma. I'm just so motivated to like get in there and figure it out and break free from those conditioned ways of being on a rational and irrational level, like on an emotional level, on a
Mhm.
nervous system level in ways I can't even explain. Um, so yeah, so I feel like it wasn't hard until I moved to Tucson. And the 5 of Pentacles, like I have been very much in a lack mindset, and that is part of when I think about the question of like what is my work in the world right now, like beyond like the work I'm offering as an act of service out in the world, the work for me personally is trusting that I can slow down
Mm.
and still be successful, whatever I define as successful in that moment, in that period of time for myself. And in doing that, slowing down is terrifying. Like I'm confronted now by my scarcity. If I'm not actively doing something all of the time, will I have enough? Will I be able to? Yeah, and so the 5 of Pentacles is absolutely like once I moved to Tucson, I was laid off from a job at the end of or no, at the beginning of 2022. The job that allowed me to buy my house. Closed on my house. 1 month later, was laid off from my job. So I've been since the beginning of 2022 very much in that 5 of Pentacles energy and refusing for better or worse. Don't recommend this approach to anybody, but refusing to get a job where I'm working for anyone else other than myself
Mhm.
and being in service to the work I'm here to do. And I can only do that when I am not answering to anybody else because coaching on someone else's terms is not how I define or want to embody coaching. So there's always a program, there's always a thing, there's a way that healthy looks that I do not align with, a way to be healthy that these coaching programs as health coaches try to really promote and hold people to, and I will not participate. So, if I want to be the coach I want to be, where I am also able to bring in astrology, somatic practices, craniosacral, I have to do it on my own terms. And so it's been since getting laid off, trying to build that while also have to figuring out how do I get money right now? Because I do have bills that are coming out like right now.
Mhm, yeah.
So, yeah, I drove for Uber and Lyft for a while.
Oh, yeah, I did some door dashing in
Yeah,
2021. Yeah,
yeah.
I hear that from a lot of creatives of really having to get creative about how to earn a living because working for others just is not in alignment for a lot of us. And that's a lot of the reason why I want to have these conversations and share these conversations because I want to give people real world examples of what it looks like to work and to earn a living that is outside of the ways that we are told we have to earn a living, because that
Mhm,
feels to me radical and revolutionary. If we can detach ourselves from giving our labor to big corporations, or oftentimes it's big corporations, because that's oftentimes where the steady income comes from. And I'll say that full disclosure, I in the last year have taken a job where I am working for a major multinational corporation in a way that feels supportive to this other work that I'm trying to continue to grow and lift up. But yeah, that is really at the end of the day the goal for this show and for these conversations, to give people examples on how we can start to detach ourselves, because that is, we're going to have to figure that out as capitalism is crumbling. If we want a revolution, if we want a different structure, a different system, okay, boots on the ground, what do we do? We still have to earn a living and figure out ways to support ourselves.
mhm, mhm. While in the process of co-creating what is to come and what
Mhm.
is needed, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
I think there was one more thing that I want to highlight looking at these two cards, looking at the past, is one of the first things you said when we started talking about your past was that you grew up in a household where you kind of had to maybe put yourself second or not be able to oh, I can't recall how you described it, but you basically said that, you were limited in your expression in a lot of ways. And I think that these two cards of the 5 of Wands and the 5 of Pentacles are also really hearkening to that this process of needing to learn how to be fully embodied in your, like, purest expression of self, that's
Mhm,
really a deeply rooted pattern that you're having to unlearn from childhood. So, for many of us, our creative processes are continuing to unravel those knots that were tied real tight in childhood. So, kudos to you for continuing to
mhm.
doing that and being able to acknowledge also that that is where some of that's coming from.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, for sure. It's such an important process to be able to recognize that and have compassion, for a lot of empathy and compassion for my little self, for like learning how to survive that environment. And I don't want to be like, it was a loving and not,
And
you know,
yes,
and
and
environment. So
exactly, exactly.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's also really important, is that you didn't have to suffer, like, extreme levels of abuse or even, capital A abuse, period, to have things that you are, like, deeply, furiously needing to unlearn from childhood. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Where do you see your work continuing to grow into? We talked about ideally looking to kind of hold containers of a few months at a time with clients, working with people over time. What would be like the best case scenario, the most beautiful future you can imagine for you and your work?
Yeah. So what I'm working to build right now is a space. It's going to be online, but I love working in person and in community too. But kind of this online space, this online community where people can tap in, and there's kind of group work that can be done. And then there's also one work that we can do together. But it's essentially a space where I will provide insights about astrology and how to use it within like a coaching kind of context and framework to support change and growth and healing. So I'm imagining kind of this like people can come in on a month to month kind of like membership kind of style. They can stay for as long as serves them, tap into whatever resources they want while they're there. And then I'm also imagining, yeah, where there is like, if folks are working with me directly in a coaching kind of context, having some sort of framework, like a time, like 3 months, 6 months, a year, however long, feels very beneficial to support kind of this evolutionary process that I intend to facilitate, guide, hold space around. So, month to month, I'm imagining I'll be holding some sort of, whether it's new moon, full moon, or both, like some group connection time, um, sharing about the moons that are happening, providing astrological kind of weather updates, and then like a group coaching space. And so, again, people can come in for a month. If that's all they needed, great. But if they want to continue, they can stay on as long as they'd like, stay connected to the community. But really, it's about, you know, utilizing astrology and somatic practices and reflection prompts and questions to support self discovery, self awareness, acceptance, compassion for self and others, and growth in a way that really allows us to break free from cyclical patterns of harm, breaking out of the ways in which we've internalized systems of harm. Yeah, and allow people to just feel more confident in being themselves and aligned with their own authenticity.
That's incredible hearing you say breaking out of these like cyclical patterns, breaking out of ways of being that have been really deeply ingrained. And I would say breaking out of stories that we've told ourselves, because that is the phrase that I often use for this card that came up for your future work, which is the Eight of Swords. The Eight of Swords, I'm always saying that this card is about freeing ourselves from the stories that we have internalized or that we tell ourselves are true that are really just keeping us limited, like self-limiting thoughts, self-limiting behaviors. And that is absolutely how I see your work working in all genres, whether it's coaching, whether it's strictly astrology. Even with some of the body work as well, breaking out of some of, oh my gosh, those patterns in our fascia that develop and start to create sticky spots and inhibit the free flow of our cerebrospinal fluid if we're getting really technical in craniosacral terms. So, wow, that is totally coming up on the horizon for you. I think that's really beautiful. Eights, when I'm talking about eights in the tarot, the keyword that I use for that I got from Lindsay Mack when I used to listen to a lot of her work is evolution. Eights are evolution. So, as an evolutionary astrologer, that's very apropos. And then the other card that came up, it's man, you are all about change, all about change. And it's some of that Uranian quality. I love meeting my fellow Uranians. You said you have Uranus on the ascendant?
Yeah.
Beautiful. I have Uranus square my ascendant, like to the
Okay.
degree. So I love my fellow Uranians. But this other card that came up is typically associated with, yeah, Jupiter. Jupiter. So talking about a lot of that Sagittarius energy you've got. So we've got the Wheel of Fortune. It's all change, baby. It's all change. So there may be something coming up on the horizon coming up for you that you can't even imagine yet. which is kind of exciting. And I think that sounds probably exciting to you as a Uranian.
Very much so. I welcome it. I have told a few people this that are close to me in the last few days, like, I'm sick of telling the same story. Like, I'm so sick of saying the things I've been saying when people ask me how I'm doing. I'm like, I'm so over myself in terms of like the patterns I've been in more recently. And again, with all the compassion and understanding as to why I'm in them. But yeah, I'm like so ready for that Wheel of Fortune moment.
Just let it spin, just let it spin. Where's it gonna
Yeah.
stop? Who knows? And with you being someone who is or has plenty of tools to remain grounded and remain centered within yourself. That's always for any folks out there who are pulling the wheel of fortune a lot. That is the key is to stay grounded, to stay centered, because then you're still going to be stable whenever that wheel stops. Then you can hop on off that ride and start to explore the new frontier in front of you. Last question for you as an evolutionary astrologer. I am curious your thoughts on our new nodal placements. So the North Node now being in Pisces, the South Node now being in Virgo. What are some things that you're keeping in mind with this shift?
So, South Node in Virgo, right? Like, Virgo is such a beautiful sign. It's an earth sign. The Virgin is the symbol for Virgo. And I always like to emphasize this is like pre patriarchal times where the Virgin is someone who is whole unto themselves.
Don't need no husband, don't need no other part to complete you. The virgin is themselves whole and full.
Yep. And complete, not broken, not needing to prove anything. So, Virgo is so relentless in its pursuit of growth and development. And so it can get really stuck on using perfection as the standard. So we're in an era of, with the South Node, it's a time of composting and releasing that which is no longer serving us related to that sign. So any kind of like rigid expectations that we are to be perfect and good and pure, purity culture, like time to let that shit go.
Get out of
So
here.
get out of here. Yes. Virgo is also the part of all of us because I always like to emphasize, even if we don't have placements in a sign, like it's a part of your chart somewhere. So the Virgo part of all of us is ripe for release in terms of releasing perfectionism and holding ourselves to that standard. It's also a time to practice a bit more surrender
Mm.
and trust and kind of stepping back and not trying to like, because Virgos love them, love that Virgo energy, so valuable, so essential. And a Virgo like can see tangible reality just as it is without any distortion. Not everyone operates that way. Not everyone can see so clearly, like in fine detail. So it can be hard for a Virgo to like hands off, let someone else take responsibility for something because Virgo can believe like no one's going to do it as good as I can, or like no one's going to be as efficient as I am. So I'll just do it.
I
And
was
they
an
can take
assistant for a
responsibility.
Virgo boss. I was an assistant for a Virgo boss for a period of time, and I'm like, never again. That was so
Yes.
scary.
Yeah. So in this moment for you, Maria Elena, right? Feel your feet on the ground. Because I imagine it can bring up that nervous system reaction to being in that space and
I
talking
don't have
about
to be
this. So
perfect. I don't have to be
yeah,
perfect. I'm doing just
no,
fine. Just because I didn't do it how
that's
you
right.
wanted me to do it.
That's right. That's right. So yes, so the medicine is then in Pisces,
Mm.
right? It's in the surrendering, it's in the letting go, it's in the just felt sense of knowing there is this eternal love that's available for all of us. There is this great ocean of compassion and empathy available. So if we catch ourselves in harsh self-criticism, because that can be another kind of Virgo affliction or vulnerability, is like being very hard on oneself and kind of hard on others if we're not keeping it in check. So to lean into compassion and empathy and kind of widening out the scope of what we're paying attention to and focusing more on, yeah, being available for loving, compassionate interactions with especially most vulnerable communities right now, knowing that when the South Node is moving through, essentially we're being granted opportunities to release whatever is there for us in our personal lives, but also collectively. Pisces, North Node, really leaning into imaginative visionary thinking, holding that space for love and compassion and something greater than all of us at play.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That infinite well of love and compassion is everyone's birthright, and we do not have to be perfect in order to receive it.
Yes. And as you know too, like really looking at your own personal birth chart to see where exactly they're going through for each of us can be incredibly beneficial.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. This north node will be moving through my 12th house, which will be very fun, and then south node moving through my 6th house of health, and I when you were talking, I was like, "Oh, I wonder if I'm gonna start eating gluten again because 'cause I've been really
Mm,
strictly, like, extremely strictly gluten-free for years, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, health things. Health things. I
mhm.
wonder what kind of habits, patterns I'm gonna be kicking to the curb." What houses are these gonna be moving through for you?
Oh, this is my 3rd and ninth house. So
Hmm.
Pisces is my 3rd house and Virgo's my ninth.
Yeah, we're gonna kinda bust out into some more community work.
And the message that I have to share and trusting my intuition a little bit more as well, and
Mhm.
I guess, yeah, just kind of slowing down.
This was such a fun conversation, and as I'm gonna send you a picture of these cards that we've pulled out here because I think you're gonna really appreciate the flow and the progression that has moved through, but thank you so much for talking to me today, Emma. Where can folks find you if they're interested in working with you?
Yeah, and first, just thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure, and yeah, I really appreciate your perspective and your wonderful questions. So, yeah, folks can find me. I have my website, just emmavasseur.com. I'm also on Instagram. It's me.emmav, and can find me in the community at the Ninth House once a month, every third Sunday. And where else? Yeah, my newsletter. So, plenty of ways to connect. You can find me in those places.
Love a newsletter, and I will have all of those links, Instagram, website, all that good stuff down in the show notes. So take a look at those. And if you would like an evolutionary astrology reading or some fantastic coaching work, as looking at these cards, it seems like Emma working with you is a deeply, deeply transformative experience. So if you're looking to transform, if you're looking to evolve, if you're looking to step into a much more aligned version of yourself, I highly recommend working with Emma Vasseur. So,
Mhm.
I think that's all we have for today. Thank you so much for listening, and as always, happy shuffling.